to summarize the question, things that I think make for good Evergreen podcast content, and things that make me excited in the audio realm. Let's start with good Evergreen content. The biggest one is going to be the most obvious one. Avoid topical discussions and time-sensitive topics. This show is far from being evergreen because I discuss policy updates for social media, and policies change seemingly every 3 or 4 months on social media platforms. So that means that the majority of these episodes are rendered obsolete after 6 months. There's not much evergreen content there. If I wanted this show to be more evergreen, I would stop discussing any of the policy for social media, and I would focus solely on the audio questions that I get. And there's a lot of great questions that I get, but I enjoy looking at the policy, so I understand this podcast is me having fun. I'm going to do what I enjoy the most. But if I wanted to do more evergreen, I would just answer those questions because audio gear lasts 10, 20, 30 years. Production questions, those will be asked for the next 30 years as well. That's something to think about. How do you want to approach your show to make it less topical and less time sensitive? How can you frame things in a more long-lasting way? For me, it would be shut up about all the policy, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to because it's the only way that I will actually look at the policy. The second one for me is shows need to get right to the content. This may seem a little bit weird about how to make evergreen content, but I have listened to a couple of podcasts and they have 7-minute introductions before they get to any content. And I think they think that's okay because podcast listeners do listen for longer periods of time. But when I start a show titled 10 Reasons Why the Water is Good for You, and then there's 7 minutes of somebody trying to sell me their courses, tell me to like, comment, and subscribe, and rate and review, and tell 5 friends about it, and go check out their website, and sign up for this new advertiser that they just got. No, I'm not going to do that. So my recommendation for evergreen content, hey, today we're going to talk about topic X. Now we're discussing topic X. If you have any, hey, sorry I missed last week, put that at the end of the episode because if somebody's going back through your catalog, they don't know. I'm sure I've made this mistake a lot in the past, but over the last year or so, I've been more intentional with making sure the personal stuff's at the end because it's not important. It's not important. So those are the 2 things that I recommend. Avoid topical discussions and get right to the content. Don't talk about why you missed last week. Don't talk about what's going on in the world right at the beginning. Throw that at the very end. A little bit of a cherry on top if somebody cares. All right, if this sounds different, it's because I'm recording it at a different time. I was editing that portion and I thought of a few more points, a few more recommendations. So I'm recording it in a position I've never recorded in before. I'm standing up. What in the world? Number 1, or number 3, I guess. Think of questions people will have. If you're making evergreen content, chances are you're trying to make sure that it lasts as long as possible. If you make a video or a podcast on a topic and then you have to address a bunch of follow-up questions a week later, that's going to be a very bad listening experience for your audience. So I think you need to preemptively think about what kind of questions your audience will have on whatever you're discussing. I know that's easier said than done, and maybe you can put out a question to your audience if you have a large enough audience saying, hey, what kind of questions do you have about topic X, Y, or Z? And then you can address those in your podcast episode. I think that will really make a much better and much more long-lasting piece of content. And the second or the fourth suggestion that I have is try to turn current events into lessons. And it's less about turning current events into lessons and more about pulling out the lessons from current events. What I mean is, if there's a new policy update on YouTube, instead of saying, hey, here's a policy update about YouTube during this time frame, you can say, How is this going to impact monetization? And more importantly, how can you hedge against potential demonetization events? Doing that will make that much more evergreen. How to hedge against demonetization is a topic that people will be searching for as long as ad-supported content is online. So instead of just talking about the news, maybe omit the news completely and just pull the lessons, the little nuggets of truth that are in the news out and turn that into your evergreen content. That's something I should do. Good advice, Bandrew. Good job. Okay, let's go back to past Bandrew now. New angle going away. What?